Welcome to Connecting with Coincidence with psychiatrist Bernard David Beitman, MD. Dr. Beitman is the founder of the Coincidence Project. The project encourages people like you to tell each other coincidence stories. To learn more about Dr. Beitman's work, put Connecting with Coincidence in your web browser. You'll find his book, his Psychology Today blog, and the interviews from this podcast. And now your host, Bernard Beitman, MD.
Welcome to the Connecting with Coincidence. I am your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. And we encourage people through this show and other ways for you to tell coincidence stories to each other, to your friends, your relatives, and also to write them down. Our guest today has written his own coincidence diary full of synchronicities and serendipities. Like David Hench, if you remember to write your stories down, you can read them later, and you will probably see patterns you would have not otherwise seen. David Hench was a lifelong poker player. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we got a poker player on this show. He wrote a poker humor column back in the day called The Joker Journal, and later compiled them into a book, which I've read some of. You got to be a poker player to understand some of the jokes, but he's a funny guy, ladies and gentlemen, and maybe you'll see how funny he is in this show. But he's clever with words and clever with ideas. And this book, The Poker World According to Cinch, which is his nickname, got some real humor in it, but it gets you right into what it's like to be a poker player. He was pretty heavy into it. But some reason he's reformed. He's a reformed poker player. And currently he is a writer of spiritual and inspirational human interest stories about sports and humor. His site is sojournal-publications.com. In his writing now, he advocates for the true self of people. He thinks that very few people get enough of that. Of course, he's right. So, David Hench, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be on. Been a big fan of your show and your books and your columns, and great to be on.
Yeah, and how did we make contact? How did that happen?
I'm sure I ran across a YouTube video at some point when I was doing my research for my synchronicity after I did my journal and outlined all my experiences with it. Then I was looking for theories about it, and you were one of the ones that came up, right from the top.
And somehow you sent me your book, your first book, the book about coincidences that we'll be talking about. Me and My Syncs. You may be old enough to know there's an old song called Me and My Shadow.
No, who did it?
It's in a 40 song, Me and My Shadow, Walking Along the Avenue. So this is David Hench walking along with his kind of shadow, his synchronicity shadow. And yeah. Lots of stories in there. So you were telling me earlier how you got to writing these things down. So tell us how that happened.
It was interesting. I'm on Facebook on a group, the Synchronicity group. Some of us post on there and, odd things here and there. And one of the ladies had posted that she was doing a diary of her writing them down. I don't know if she had the intent of doing a book or not, but she said, and she encouraged me. She said, and we didn't hardly know each other than just posting. And she said, well, why don't you start writing them down? Do a journal or a diary. And I said, well, I sure wish I had always done that. But, there's so many now, there's so many years ago that I'll never come up with much of it. She said, no, I bet you, if you try, it will come to you. And it sure did. Once I started writing them down, many from years ago, it had been a bit of a thread through my life to a point where I had a term for it, not knowing the Jungian discipline and terminology of synchronicity, I called them fractals. Fractals being a thing which I thought just sort of connotes to me a little snippet part of the whole which indicates something about a greater whole, a fractal. And I think maybe that's a little bit what it is in physics or mathematics. It's related to that anyway. So I was using that term, and eventually I did start writing them down, and they came to me from years ago and from current. And as in the Cosmic Trigger, Anton Wilson says, and once you start paying attention, it will start paying attention to you. And I found that very, very apropos. And, you know, like with anything else, there's a bias to where if you're looking for something, you're going to find it more. But there's also, there might be two ends to that, where it's something there is, there might be two ends and not just all on one side, you know.
Yeah, it might be looking for you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I've got stories like that where it seems to be that the thing is looking for you, or a person too is looking for you. And
oh, great one. My favorite one, 15 seconds, the Howard Carter thing with King Tut's tomb. I wrote years ago in a paper, it was like the tomb was hounding the guy. And it went on for years and years and years and years, you know, the 1922. And I was a little bit into Egyptology. It was just a very mystical, fascinating thing. And at some point I said that tomb was hounding that guy. And at the last second, when his financial guy was saying, okay, I'm out, we spent too much money, we're never going to find this thing, he found it, you know. And so it's a great story. Just relates perfectly to what you said. Like, it's not always you seeking, it's the universe is sending it to you. Come on, find me, you know, find me. I love that. I love that perspective.
well, a lot of people have it, and it's an interesting way of thinking about things, about all of this. We tend to have it's all about me thing, and I made it happen, or the universe made it happen, or something, but it's all about me. And to think that there's something else out there that is looking for you, and you're looking for it. It's a nice thing, and it can be true in romance as well as finding out stuff, as well as looking for things. So it's a way of believing about the world that somehow this reinforced.
Yes. One of your guests on your show, I couldn't name him off the top of my head, but he was right along this line that, you know, it's a two-way street, you know. There's something in the universe trying to produce this. It's not just coincidence.
Well, tell us where you are, David. I mean, we see you in a room. There's a door back there, but where's your location?
I'm in a condo. I'm in my condo. I just moved cross country. I'm in Kentucky, where I was lifelong until I went to Florida for about 10 years. And all these sinks started raining on me in Florida. It was a new life path. It was a new very much a transitional life path, as you write about in your book, Synchronicity. And as Gibbs Williams, one of your great guests, writes, is a big believer that it's about transition and psychoanalytic things where these synchronicities start coming in and your mind is making them up. Anyway, so I'm in Kentucky. I'm in my condominium. Can you see a couple Joker statues behind me? Can you see that? That's my trickster stuff. If you see
Bring them up closer so we can see them.
You want to grab them?
Yeah.
Anyway, I had a Joker collection. That's just a Joker base because I wrote that poker humor column, and it was just natural for me to be collecting Jokers. All the while, I'm scoffing at the concept, as I said in my book, of the Jungian concept and of the trickster. I thought it sounded fanciful, you know, like a fairy tale, like a Cinderella or something. But I would never be dismissive of something like that, Jungian. But I was about that. Yet all the while, I'm writing a poker humor column. I'm on this this tack of very unconventional the special probability as compared to general probability. You roll a dice, 1 in 6, it's going to be a 1. 1 in 6, it's going to be a 2, etc. If you 7 straight reds on the roulette wheel does not mean the 8th one is more likely to be black. That's your general probability. But the special probability, which ties in so well with the trickster, is what I'm writing about. Yet I'm saying to myself all these years, trickster, yeah, right, abominable snowman, the trickster, or what's Loch Ness monster, not real. But at the same time, I had a house full of Joker statues, and I'm writing this stuff that, in retrospect, could be trickster stuff. I believe it is now. Trickster archetype.
Well, you've had a few tricksters tricking you on the poker table, and it's as we get into some of the stories that you have. How did you get to be a poker player, David?
Well, there's a lot of more famous cases of me of guys who dropped out of school and started playing poker, and some of the biggest names in the poker world, and I won't even compare myself to them, but I could say the names. But it happens. I don't say I recommend it particularly, but it certainly is a rife arena for synchronicitous occurrences, because you're in the world of probability, and where coincidence and odds and special odds are in the air, and with millions of trials, over 30, 40 years, you got millions of different trials, and some weird stuff's going to happen, and some weird, impossible patterns might happen, and along with synchronicities and coincidences. You just get the feeling it can't be random. At the end of my poker career, I'm proud of my statements, which poker players laughed at. My statement was, this game is, let me get it right.
It's probability, but it's not random.
Exactly. This game is probabilistic, but it's not random, meaning the result, and that's a great way to say it, to what I'm trying to express anyway, is that, yes, there's a science of probability that describes all this, but that, just like with the quantum world, a deep meaning and a reason and sense can come out of the randomness.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly what random means. There's a lot of unknown stuff in the word random for us.
Right.
And so this is kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. The idea, as our audience can see, is here's a guy who's in a field that's circumscribed, where a lot of numbers are taking place, a lot of turnover, a lot of possibilities, a lot of probabilities, a lot of potential synchronicities, coincidences, serendipities happening, and they happen fast, because coincidences happen when two or more things cross. And you have to have them crossing somehow within a short period of time. On the poker table, that's happening all the time.
Right.
The cards are crossing across each other, and stuff happens. And the idea that there could be something else besides probability, and most people think there is. I mean, there's people watching tells from the other guys.
Right. Huge psychology in the game. Huge. Yeah.
Plenty of psychology. And there's this intuition thing too going on.
Yeah.
And you describe in one of your stories that you, number 37, that you were able to call a card up before it was shown.
Yeah. That's a weird one.
Well, tell us about that one.
Okay, it's happened many times. And now, of course, what you have to factor in here, it's a little bit like that football catch I described. It's in the moment. You normally would never even try to predict what card is coming off. I mean, you know what the possibilities are. But you're not naming a specific card. But it happens once in every great while. You just name you go ahead and say it. You say it out loud because you have a strong feeling. And this happens in losing streaks. You have a strong feeling that it's pure intuition, that the worst possible card is going to come for your hand. This is exactly how it happens with me. So you figure what that card, you deduce, because you've got your hand, you've got the flop. Now you're talking, the money's going in, you've got the turn and the river coming, and those are the key cards. And what is the worst card possible for this hand? And when that starts, there's almost like a streak to it that's alive. And only an intuitive person would say this now, and a very linear ABC, even expert player in that regard, would scoff. Maybe like I scoffed at the trickster. But you can get in these runs where your intuition is powerful about what's going to happen next. Now, what you're feeling is the result of what's going to happen next. So then you deduce from there, okay, well, this card, if it would make sense, the result, if this particular card came. And it's happened on TV several times where these big name players I've mentioned before, not their names, but called the turn in the river card exactly. And what was the odds on that? It was something like 2,000, was 1,000 to 1, about 1,000 to 1 maybe. And
what's a river card?
The last card. The turn is, you got 3 cards on the flop. The turn is the 4th card. The river is the 5th card. So those 2 cards are critical to the outcome of the hand. Often you turn those cards off after all the money's gone in. So you're just waiting to see the result. So what you have is you don't know what card's going to come near as much as you have an intuition about the result of your hand, good or bad for yourself. And from there you can deduce, which card is the worst card possible. And when you get in one of these streaks, you can name it. You can name it, and it's an eerie thing. It's an eerie thing. It arises in the moment. Now I want to make a point about this on our show at some point. Those Rhine experiments that Jung wrote about, in a situation like I'm describing right here, you can't put a guy in skeptics are welcome, and of course ears are gonna bristle here, but you can't put a guy in a laboratory and say, now name the card that's gonna come off. And the reason you can't do, and you've lost everything, you've lost the complete context and the moment, the context of the moment, and the factors that are influencing this intuitive idea of what's going to happen. So now if you take him out, put him in a laboratory and say, there's a deck of cards over there, what's the 27th card down on the deck? He has nothing coming into him from the psychosphere, Bernie, from your psychosphere in this new situation that you create in the lab that's going to tell him what it is. However, in the situation in which it occurred, the psychosphere was alive with information that he was picking up on, perhaps. And again, a linear player would scoff, but it's real. An intuitive player knows exactly what I'm talking about. And in the whole any walk of life, intuition in any walk of life, you wrote that with some of your patients in certain situations, you had a strong intuition that this or that was coming. And it's because of your expertise and the moment and everything about the psychosphere that you call it that you are sensing to. You're talking about transducing the buyers, the psychosphere at the end of your book. Unbelievable concept. But I think that is happening in that moment, where that's not going to happen if you just put somebody in a lab and say, okay, is the following card going to be diamond, club, heart, or spade? Is that what Ryan was doing? So you got a 1 in 4 chance. And then they're trying to get people to get 27% instead of 25%. That's a different subject. That's a different subject than this special probability intuition thing, where you've got something coming at you that's giving you the strong impression of what the result of this trial is going to be. An individual trial, I call it the blessed individual, the sacred individual trial. They're always talking about independent trials, but the individual trial can never be reproduced. Everything is unique. Every trial is unique. And okay, so maybe enough of a rant on that, but that's a little bit of my special probability, deeply entwined with intuition. And Jung's definition of intuition, your subconscious mind is adding things up. It's not magic. It's not, it's not necessarily psionic, or could be, but it is your subconscious. It's got the greatest computer in the world is behind our ears, right? It's got access to information that we don't know what it all is, but yet it comes out. Okay.
And what's this? What is the relationship between intuition and the psychosphere?
Well, I would say that now my term for psychosphere, I love it in your book, but I was using quantum field for that. If the quantum field, it's everywhere, it's alive, it's percolating with information and everything. If it's there, that is where your intuition part is coming from. We have receptors. You write in the back in maybe the last chapter of Collecting with Coincidences that that we are transducing, meaning our brain, our senses take in vision, hearing, sound, and we know what's happening there, and it transforms it electricity into electricity, goes into our brain, and now we have the information. This can also happen in ways that we don't know fully about yet, as in sensing things coming at us that we don't know exactly how we got it, but we picked it up from the psychosphere. If the quantum field, which contains all, my definition is that it contains all knowledge, it amplifies everything, it creates existence, all the information is there. The human brain can pick up some of that. That's a mystical viewpoint, but I wish I could bet on it. Who was it that said, Tesla said, hey, when they get into the mind and what it can really do, instead of just looking at the physical world, then they're going to make leaps and bounds that they've never made before. So I've got some guys on my side that are not woo-woo. This isn't the woo-woo channel. Okay.
Okay. The potential of the mind is being tapped now, and kind of the things that you were talking about. The relationship between the mind and the psychosphere, which you equate with a quantum field, and I suggest it's something different from the quantum field. It's more connected to Earth. So the quantum field goes on forever. It's all over the universe. And this may be a subset of the quantum field.
Yes, exactly.
If we don't like to, if you can do, some people don't like to divide it up. They want the universe, everything. The universe and quantum field are getting to be something similar. The quantum field is more specific. But I stay within what our Earth's atmosphere. I like to stop at the ionosphere and keep it just with us chickens running around on Earth. And it probably is a holographic representation of something much larger.
I love it.
But I want to be able to stay with it right here and keep with it as a place where we have interchanges. It's not just a place we go to for information, but we also influence the way it operates. Because we have a section of our own minds that is operating within the psychosphere as well that's being influenced, and that influences what goes on up in there.
I love it.
And that's an interactive idea rather than just one-way street.
Yes, and I would agree. And I love your framing it as a subset of the quantum field. It could well be, or it could be something separate. But if the Akashic field idea would be related, right?
Yeah, that keeps coming in there. Akashic record. It's the same idea as a lot of memories being stored someplace. Akashic was an old name for it. And memory in the psychosphere, but it's not all easily accepted by anybody. It's something about the way you have to pattern your mind that then finds a resonating pattern in the psychosphere, that then between the two of them you come up with something. So we have relative uniqueness in all of us, and that uniqueness has something to do with the patterns by which we can interact with the psychosphere, and through the psychosphere interact with other minds that are also floating around in there. And that's how we get things like telepathy, for example.
And maybe where Mozart comes from, right? As a
And
child.
maybe where Mozart comes from, or
And
your Beethoven story.
where strange, yeah, that would be a good one. And strange links between consciousness. I love that. Of course, we know what entanglement is, but I love the idea of entangled consciousness, where two people in particular, if the psychosphere are more very greatly attuned. I have one of these experiences that it's almost magical. It's almost, you recognize it. Yeah, I know this. I've recognized this. I've never seen it in my life, but I completely know this, almost to the point that I know what sentence is coming next. That type of link, and connection and familiarity. You know, it could be coming through a source like that. You know.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's now that we know that you're back in Kentucky, and what town is it?
Lexington, Central Kentucky, University of Kentucky land. You know.
Lexington, Kentucky.
Yeah.
That's why the poker players kept calling you Kentucky. Or
yeah. You picked that up in the stories.
Yeah, I picked it up.
Call you wherever you're from. A lot of time it's, you know, if you're not from, in the old days when it was all out in Las Vegas, I haven't been there in years because it's everywhere now. But in the old days when a lot of the poker was in Las Vegas, they call you wherever, the locals out there would call you wherever you're from, and it's a put down, you know, it's like you're either from New York or you're not, or out there, it's either you're from Las Vegas or you're not.
And Kentucky's easy to make fun of too.
Yep.
Which you got.
I was going to leave that out. So it was probably a bit more of a deal on that. Yeah.
Oh, in your book, Me and My Sinks, strolling down the avenue, I can't help continuing that. But you call it a harrowing look into the handiwork of synchronicity. Why do you refer to it as harrowing? Okay.
I got this question the other day, and I deliberated on that word and where I was going to put the word harrowing, because here's the reason. Many synchronicities are very vanilla, garden variety, and just cute, a little strange, whatever, no big deal, but just a little minor phenomenon that we would expect to happen during life. Some of them, however, are so reality called harrowing, you know.
No, we got cut off there when you said so reality. So start back at that.
Well, I'm not sure where that point was.
You were saying reality pretty firmly.
Okay. Harrowing, but
yeah,
certain extreme, complex, ridiculously long shot synchronicities radicalize your view of reality. Where did this come from? What is the nature of things such that this could happen and continue to happen? So that's harrowing. That is my use of harrowing there, because that's not just two people called each other at the same time, and there are many good vanilla flavored syncs like that, which are all cool. I have a bunch of vanilla ones here, but I have some that are so strange, so super strange, I describe, that it's harrowing to try to integrate it into a conventional picture of reality. Okay,
I got it.
Okay.
They're mind blowers in another term, and for Jung they might be called noetic or something like that. I always forget, but it's a spiritual experience. Numinous. Yeah, numinous.
Jung like that. Yeah, I like that too. I got to admit, I have a little bias in that direction, but I'm skeptical too, you know. So, and I feel like you are too. You've got some numinous in you, but you're skeptical too.
Yeah, I've got both.
Yeah.
It's like some people go in different directions.
Yeah.
I think I tend to be kind of balanced. So now we understand harrowing, because there's like numinous, mind-blowing, major change affecting ones in there, as they've done to you. And you've had some funny ones. I don't know. Before we get to the 27, I think your string of 7,276,402, maybe I'm exaggerating, of losses at the harrowing table Tell us about that string and what it meant to you.
Okay. There came a stretch about 35 years or so in my career, about 5 years ago. In retrospect, you had a guy on your show that was talking about cycles, the cycles of, I should have got that name. I watched so many of your shows. And he said at age certain cycles, every 13 years or something. Do you remember the show? It's definitely your show. But anyway, it happened to me at age 55. That was part of his theory. At age 55, when you get into some new thing where you can't, the old thing doesn't work anymore. And not only that, but you can't even go back. You can't go back. It ended. It died. So what happened with me in this poker thing, you know, each one of these hands in the specific game I play, you've got a certain amount of, generically speaking, general probability, you've got a certain percentage chance to win each hand. Once the cards are there and there's one or two cards left. So, and it's called outs. You might have 10 outs to win the pot, which means 10 cards for you. You might have 15, you might have 20. Extreme examples, you might have 20 or 25. Well, there are big examples also where you have every card but one, where you win the pot. You know, the guy has one out on you. So this started to unfold for me where it just went to 0%. Now, everybody has losing streaks in poker and in gambling of all sorts. And I have a good grasp of what length of losing streak is reasonable. And the longest one I ever had was about 20 sessions. This one went over 400 sessions.
400 times losing.
Yeah, sessions. No, I didn't lose all 400. I didn't lose all 400, but the losing was continuous almost for the entire 400. And the hands that lost was impossible statistically. You would think, and I don't want to put this out there in a serious way, the first common explanation for this extreme of a result would be cheating. But that wasn't, you know, you have to be getting cheated. You know, but that wasn't it at all, and I'm not raising that. It was just an extreme.
What was extreme? What was happening in those settings? You'd walk out of those settings having lost money.
Yeah,
that's
but
what you're talking
much
about.
more so than that. You have these hands, thousands of them over the sessions, thousands of them, where you're some 25% to 98% to win the hand. And it went, I should say, virtual 0%. It went to almost 0% over thousands of trials, and including these 98% where you've got 43 cards to win the pot and the other guy's got one. Well, like it was 11 times out of 17 or something, 11 times instead of 1 out of 100, 11 out of 17, the guy caught the one outer. I mean, I was stuck in a pattern there, and that's not even the extreme part of the streak.
You would lose when you had a high probability of winning.
Yeah.
And that happened times.
Yeah, and that's not way more than several. It got stuck on near 0%. It was an anomaly. It was a statistical anomaly of humongous proportions. I played for 40 years. I've never seen anything within, 1/20th of this, because I had a 20 session. This one was over 400.
I'm trying to be able to get the language to where a non-poker player can understand it. Try to get the kinds of losses that you were experiencing that were low probability for losing.
Okay.
As well as.
Let me see if I can take it outside of anything that's probabilistic. If we put it on the roulette table and said red and black, that's not a great example. But anything is probabilistic where, there's an expectation to the results. Okay, there obviously is a percentage expectation to the results. And the farther you get from that expectation, which always happens, you're all over the place. You're usually in the middle range. Sometimes you're at the outer range of good luck, at the lower range.
Yeah, that's regular probability, yeah.
That's right. That's all completely typical. There's an extreme outlier range where it's only very few people ever get to that extreme outlier range, like Bobby Fischer in chess. So just an example off the top of my head, very few people get to that outlier range so far from the pack. So it's like that, where you're so many standard deviations from what even the variability in the range would be, that it's gotten impossible.
Yeah.
You've got impossible land unless there's an explanation other than randomness.
Yeah.
So go into my grave saying there's an explanation other than randomness.
Special probability, as you call it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So when you were in the tail of this, let us say, bell-shaped curve, and you were way out where no man has gone, like Star Trek, what was happening? What was the form of the losing that got you there?
The form of the losing.
Yeah, what did you lost at times when you thought you shouldn't lose because the probabilities were high, and you had times when you just got dealt a lot of bad cards.
Right.
And those were the two ways that you kept losing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to, and it's the two low probabilities are getting a lot of bad cards a lot of times, and then getting some good cards, and those good cards don't make it because somebody else has beaten you. Cards.
Yeah, yeah. And if somebody has one out, they keep hitting it, and you're supposed to win 98% of those pots, and you're winning 30% of those.
That'll be good enough for this part of it.
Okay.
Just to get some idea. So you had a string of losing that went on for how long?
Until I finally just said, you know what? And a friend of mine said, I was described to, said, well, you're just not supposed to be in the poker room anymore. And that's exactly how I believed it was true. But it's hard to get that out of your system, to get to say, okay, I'm not going to play. And it's a big high to play and win. It's a huge high. I've experienced that for decades. And the players are good. The players are better. That's not even what I'm talking about. The results are so anomalous of this set that I'm saying as to be mathematically impossible. So there's something else. And that something else is what we're talking about. What we're talking about. And the whole thing was like made to order. It was queued up. It was Jungian. Okay. It was queued up. It was made to order. It was a Jungian individuation thing, that synchronicity. That streak came when I was asking for it, in a sense.
Which was took 5 years, taken 5 years of losing to get out of doing poker.
5 years of winning before. And you're playing, like I say, it's a big high. It's an escape from reality. There's a great quote that people go to the casino to leave the self behind. A psychologist said that to leave the self behind. And that's what I was doing. There's a great book called Lost in the Shuffle. It's an oldie. Lost in the Shuffle. It's not even about cards, it's about psychology. But how perfect was that for me? Because both the shuffle of the deck and lost in the shuffle in the sense he meant. It's a great psychology book. So the point of this streak, I'm saying, it was so synchronicious. Was delivered. It was delivered as an individuation nudge to me, because
to get real. Yeah. There's a form of a spiritual hiding where people called spiritual bypass, where people bypass regular reality by being overly spiritual. And it's the same thing.
Very familiar with it. Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, tell us about February 27th, because I like that, because it's my February 27th is my birthday. I just had a birthday.
What sync number was that? That was
that's number 24.
I've got it down there. Okay, that was a phone discussion I was having with a friend of mine. Her birthday was February 27th. So we're talking on the phone late at night, and she was living in California, and she had met, as I was saying here, she had met Dean Martin, Cary Grant, all these people. So we're always talking movies and movie trivia and favorite movies and things like that when we're talking. So it's her birthday, and it continuously things that came up in this conversation. And I have a lot of weird things around birthdays. I have a lot of little synchronicities around birthdays. So I noticed this one, that different people that came up in the conversation, because I was looking them up as we spoke and giving her information on them. Several people, Elizabeth Taylor, birthday February 27th, came up in the conversation. Joanne Woodward, birthday February 27th, she came up in the conversation. Josh Groban, the singer, he came up in the conversation because a friend of mine had just gone and seen him live in the big Christmas concert he does somewhere at Rockefeller Center. And he came up, and I noticed as I looked him up, his birthday was February 27th. This is February 27th that we're talking. And two other things came up on politics in that discussion. One of them was, it was something about the women's rights. Was the women's, the suffrage women, I think it was passed on a February 27th, women's suffrage. Yes, that's it. And so I'm looking these things up, and February 27th is raining on me, and it's weird. It's weird. So that was that one.
Well, that's a string of coincidences.
There you go.
They're of the kind that might be called serial coincidences,
There we go.
but I call them object coincidences because you can see them. You can see them, and somebody else can see them. A lot of coincidences are connections between your mind and something else.
Yes.
An image
Yeah.
in your mind.
Yeah.
But here it was objective, and you had a series, and they were close together, which is really an important part of it.
Now, let me give you a message to that if I can. It was the Beethoven thing, because that Beethoven, I was always a huge fan of Beethoven. Love of music, of course, but I love that personality type. The extremely idiosyncratic, almost bizarre type of personality is a favorite thing of mine. So Bobby Fischer being another case. So one night, late at night, I'm 30-something years old. I'm having this powerful intuition out of the blue to read about Beethoven. I want to read about him. I want to read more about him. I've always been fascinated with him. Now I want to read about him. I'm tired of putting this off. And it's late at night, and it's right before Christmas. And I keep fighting off the urge because I'm feeling lazy. I don't want to drive to the store, as I said in my write-up here. Eventually, right before midnight, the bookstore was open till midnight. Our big bookstore right up the road here during Christmas. They had concerts, cultural events, music, everything on Friday and Saturday nights. So I knew they were going to be open. So the Beethoven thing, I want to read about Beethoven keeps coming at me. So I get up. I eventually, right before midnight, I shoot up the street, get 2 or 3 books on Beethoven. That day was his birthday. That day of December 16th. Now, in history, it's unknown whether Beethoven was born on December 16th or 17th. It's one of those 2 days. I went at midnight on December 16th, which is both days. I walked in, December 16th. I walked out on December 17th, as if to symbolize, with this thing coming at me, you might say from the psychosphere, this impulse to go read about Voltaire. It was his birthday when it was coming at me. Now that's a little weird. That's not an ultra weird sync, but it's a little weird,
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that makes you pay attention.
Yeah.
It makes you think that something's going on.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of things about birthdays.
And there's something that's going on as we're coming to the end of our show today, and you can see how fast it goes.
Yes.
And we've talked about a bunch of stuff, and we could talk about a bunch more. But why don't we end with where you're going now in your life with the coincidence, synchronicity experiences? What's your plans with them? What are they going to do with you?
I'm going to say this. The Jungian, what I get doctrine is, from what I gather, is it's about the prevalence of synchronicity relates to individuation, to self-actualization. So I'm going to say if self-actualization and getting away from poker or being absorbed in any pursuit that is taking you away from everything that's actually important, if that's what was needed, that this streak was delivered because I had opened myself to this. I was investigating this already, and here comes an impossible streak to reinforce it. So I'm going to say if self-actualization is the purpose of life in a general sense, for people, for turtles, for the universe itself, it is actualizing itself. Then built into that whole fabric, synchronicities would be waypoints along that fabric, affirming your path is more wise than the one that was escaping reality. That is Jungian individuation, sort of, as it relates to synchronicity, as I understand it. So that's the path. That's the path for me. If the casino was away from the self, the new path is toward the self. Amen.
Well, I think you've got an idea there about what individuation is, and that our purpose is that, and that synchronicities are guides on the path, and there are tricksters who are available to trick us, and usually the trickster's there to trick us, to make us feel like, maybe even if it makes us feel bad, like having a medical problem. Like I now have sciatica, which is no fun.
Well, I do too. It's all the way down my left leg. What do you, which leg you got it?
Left leg.
Left leg.
Yeah.
Starts right in the hip for me and goes down to the foot.
Yeah, it's no fun. I'm trying to see if I can do something about it. It's we won't talk about our medical issues too much detail here, but we're going to have to stop. But you've got individuation going, and what I have to think about with having sciatica, which occurred the day after a very nice birthday party for me. So I put that together, even though people might not think so. I've had a little sciatica kind of trouble before. This is the worst. And so here, connected to a time I had a good time with, and I'm not used to having parties for me. And we had a nice party. It was outside, but we were able to do some dancing, and it was very nice. And then the next morning I wake up with shooting pain in my butt, and I've been limping around ever since. And it's made my blood pressure go up. So it's like
the pain makes your blood pressure go up, fighting the pain. Is that what?
I think so. I think my blood pressure has been having trouble anyway from something else. So I'm struggling with blood pressure and sciatica right now. At least I could go to the gym and it didn't hurt in some places. But this is, what does it mean becomes a symbol for both of us to have sciatica, and what's it trying to tell us about our individuation process? Those are the kinds of questions that I tend to ask. I get tired of them because I don't like the pain, but they're questions that we should be asking ourselves.
Yeah, a friend of mine had a good quote: "The human body isn't easy, and there's a reason for it. It takes us deeper, it's pain and problems like that can take us deeper into our own experience. There are stretches that are good for sciatica. There are a few stretches in particular that can be really good. They can also, depending on your problem, they can flare it worse. It's a delicate thing.
Yeah.
So you probably try a physical therapist or something. Have you tried that yet?
Yeah, I have. I'm going to go to a chiropractor. Physical therapist didn't add much, but I've seen a couple of stretches that seem to help.
Okay. Good luck with it. It can be stubborn, or it can disappear.
Yeah, I've had it before. It went away.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's hope for both of us.
Right.
As we're saying now, we'll disappear from here, and hopefully your sciatica and my sciatica will also disappear.
Okay.
Thank you very much for being on the show, David.
Enjoyed being on. Thanks a lot for having me.
You're welcome.
Okay.
This psychosphere is our mental atmosphere, like a hologram of cosmic consciousness.